We're talking about ecocide. It's been a term around for a while. It was coined by a biologist named Arthur Galston, and he was actually one of the people that first discovered the defoliation components of now called Agent Orange, which was then later used in the Vietnam War. And so he came out against the use of this chemical and called upon the United Nations. And he said the United Nations would appear to be an appropriate body for the formulation of a proposal against ecocide. So it was the first time that the term was used. It literally means killing our home, side, to kill, eco, our home. Okay. Also from Cambridge Dictionary, destruction of the natural environment of an area or very great damage to it. And then good old Wikipedia gives a more robust definition. Ecocide is criminalized human activity that violates the principles of environmental justice, such as causing extensive damage or destroying ecosystems or harming the health and well-being of a species, including humans. So that's when you include the human aspect to it. So we'll be focusing a bit today on the proposal that was first put forth in 2010 by an environmental lawyer, a British woman named Polly Higgins, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. I hope you all had a chance to view the TED Talk that I sent around. Very inspirational woman, really championed for the addition of this ecocide law to be added to the Rome Statute, which I'll explain in just a moment. But the definition that she puts forward, the legal definition of ecocide, is the extensive damage to, destruction of, or loss of ecosystems of a given territory, whether by human agency or by any other causes, to such an extent that peaceful enjoyment by the inhabitants of that territory has been severely diminished. So I'm hoping that we can use this definition today when we're duking it out in the courtroom. And I think it's interesting because it includes not only harm from human activity or human-caused ecocide, but also natural catastrophes. And so basically her thinking was to create a duty of care, for the state to have a duty of care to prevent, prohibit, and preempt both types, the human-caused ecocide as well as natural catastrophes. And we can think about that now in terms of the effects of climate change with increased and more intense storms and things like that. So getting into the law a bit, I think most of you will have had a chance to read through the Rome Statute. It was an agreement that formally formed the International Criminal Court. It actually took place over 5 weeks, a 5-week conference in Rome. And not only did it form the International Criminal Court, but it also established the court, how the court would function and the jurisdiction and structure. And so it was approved in '98. It didn't go into effect until 2002. And so within the Rome Statute, you have Article 5, which has 4 core crimes, or the crimes against peace. And those crimes are genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, which can happen during times of war or peace, and the crime of aggression. And so what's being suggested by Polly Higgins and others is that there should be a 5th crime, which would be the crime of ecocide. And so this is being termed the missing crime against peace. And it was actually included early on, some of the working groups and early drafts put forth ecocide in conjunction with genocide, and there was a draft code of crimes against the peace and security of mankind that included willful damage to the environment, which was Article 26. And unfortunately, when the final Rome Statute was decided upon, Article 26 was removed, though the environmental aspect does appear under the relationship to a war crime. But other countries, several countries around the world, here's a list, actually came out with their own domestic ecocide laws using Article 26. And so you can see a lot in Eastern Europe and Ecuador, which we read the rights to nature in their constitution in 2008, and then they put it into their criminal code in 2014. So there's still a lot of discussion about what this crime of ecocide would entail. and this idea of intent versus liability. Many, including Polly, would have said that it's actually liability that is prosecutable. And then questions around who would serve as the responsible agent when it's a corporation or company, who goes to jail, and then the extent to the destruction, when is it considered ecocide? Is, for example, is rainforest destruction, if you destroy an acre or an entire region, what constitutes ecocide? So there are some limitations to enacting ecocide within the Rome Statute, in that not all countries of the world have ratified this agreement or this treaty. United States, though it didn't sign immediately, it did sign in the early years and has since withdrawn, as has Russia. So you can see the countries in orange in the map were previous signatories, and now they've withdrawn from the treaty. And then some major countries like China, India, Indonesia have not signed on. So all the countries in red. So there's also the idea that rather than adding it to the Rome Statute and adding a fifth crime against peace, that there could actually be a transnational environmental crime that would be tried in a separate court, the International Environmental Court.